Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Chargers Analytics with Arjun. I know it's been a little bit, but here to talk a little bit about what the Chargers did in free agency, talk a little bit about the draft, and honestly, just talk about the way Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley have built this new look roster, which contains a lot of new faces. I'm hoping we bring a couple old guys back, but let's get straight into it. So Chargers free agency. I've been on a couple of the live emergency podcasts discussing, JC Jackson and Khalil Mack and Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson. So just go check out that if you want to get my opinions on everything. But just to kind of recap the Chargers free agency, they've pretty much gone all in on defense, which is what I expected last year. You go all in on offense and you build the offense around Herbert. Now you go all in on defense, get the guy Staley needs to run his scheme. And I think they got everyone at reasonable values, right? You're getting JC Jackson at the 7th highest APY per all cornerbacks, getting Sebastian Joseph Day for 8 mil, Austin Johnson for 7 mil. Both come in lower than guys like BJ Hill and Foley Fatukasi. So, great value signings for the Chargers. Again, Tom Telesco and Ed McGuire and the rest of that personnel team do a great job of getting guys at great value. Now, the difference in this year's free agency versus like almost every other year is they're getting young guys. They're not just getting, guys for good deals who are good players. They're getting young guys. And I think The Athletic wrote an article about like execs being pulled about every single team. And one of the major knocks on the Chargers, outside of like, okay, the Chargers always do a good job of filling holes. They always have a talented team, but Tom Telesco before this year, he always went and got older guys. So the roster, it looked good on paper, but the roster always got older during free agency. And I think he did a great job of going away from that. And you get JC Jackson, who's only like 26 or 27. You get Joseph Day, who's coming off his rookie contract. You have Austin Johnson, only 6 years of experience, right? So you get younger, you get better on almost all facets of the team. And that's a good way to build your team. Now, let's talk about how I think they're using analytics in the front office. There's a reason they didn't bring back Kaiser White, and it's not because they didn't like him. It's not because the coaches didn't want him. They didn't bring back Kaiser, I think, strictly because of positional value. And it's just because linebacker isn't that important in Staley's defense. He's going to live in nickel and dime. He wants to run 2 or 3 safeties on the field at a time, right? Like in an ideal scenario, I think Derwin James is playing in the box and you can run Nasir Adderley and Alohi Gilman back there, or you're running 4 CBs, but they don't have a 4th cornerback because their 4th guy is Tevon Campbell. So they're trying to live in nickel and dime. And on top of that, this is just a standard thing that teams do. They try to overcompensate for their mistakes and they try to justify their draft picks, right? Like I don't know what goes on in that building, but there's probably, I wouldn't say a power struggle, but there's probably conversations with, from the front office and Brandon Staley where it's like, okay, Brandon Staley might want Kaiser back, but the front office is saying, no, we want to see Kenneth Murray. We drafted him. We traded up and drafted him in the 1st round. Like we have to see what he's about, right? Like we have to justify why we traded up for him. And that's ultimately why I think they let Kaiser White go. It was a very modest deal that the Eagles signed him for. But again, I think positional value is just something that the Chargers are valuing a little more now. And that's something that Brandon Staley talked about at the owners meeting or whatever, where he talked about like, we want to make sure we're bringing guys and signing guys for the right value. So now with, kind of like the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd wave of free agency finished, the Chargers still have holes on the roster, right? Like, I don't know what they're doing at right guard. I'm assuming Ode Ibushi will come back. He signed, I think, a little bit later in the process than last year. Everyone's kind of just questioning like what they're doing at right tackle. To me right now, I think the plan for them will probably be Filer at right tackle and Hymas at left guard. That way, you see what you can do with your draft pick in Hymas and then obviously take care of a big need at right tackle with Filer, who had some of the best years of his career at right tackle with the Steelers, right? Which is something that Sean Surratt saw when he was the assistant offensive line coach in Pittsburgh. So I think that's how the Chargers approach the offense and the offensive line. They obviously still need a running back too, but I think at this point you just skip the free agency mark and you go straight to the draft. I really hope they don't take a running back in the first 3 rounds, and I hope that they just save for like a 7th or 6th round comp pick to take a running back. Because obviously it's still going to be the Austin Eckler show, but they just need someone who can spell him, who can give him a rest and not be like super inefficient, which is what Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree are. Defensively, I was neutral about the JC Jackson signing. Like, obviously he's a great player, he should elevate this defense, but signing him kind of takes away from some of the depth that you can build, which is again the problem with the Chargers last year. They just didn't have depth, and Tavon Campbell is still currently CB4. So if Michael Davis or JC Jackson or Asante get hurt, you're putting Tavon Campbell in. And is that something that they should be or are comfortable with? And I think the answer should be no, right? There's still quality guys on the market. They could get Kyle Fuller for cheap. He's had a ton of experience in Brandon Staley and Vic Fangio's scheme, right? Like, you should be getting cheap guys, veteran guys, like the Bengals did. The Bengals just threw money at cornerbacks, hoped some of them hit, which they did, and they built depth based on veterans, right? Like, I know the Chargers have all these draft picks, but how many of them are actually going to make an impact? Like, we only have, I think now, 2 picks in the top 100. That's not like, both of those picks, you should be hoping to be impact players on day one, and the rest are depth pieces you can develop into starters by years 3, 4, or 2 and 3 of their rookie deal, right? Like, let's be real, like a 4th through 7th rounder are not going to be as productive as a 1st through 3rd rounder in year 1. So I think that's what the Chargers should be trying to do, is just keep filling out their depth. They need more corners. They definitely need more edge rushers. I still don't know why it's just Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack right now, because they have no one else. Like, Fackrell's gone, Nwosu's gone. I mean, Chris Rumph is like, he didn't really do anything last year, and I'm sure like everyone would love to see him progress, but like, we don't know how good or bad he is yet. Like, and that unknown at 3rd edge rusher, when they need to give Bosa or Mack a break, is going to be like, that's going to be important. So that those 2 positions definitely still need some improvement. I think the linebacking group is, again, fine. Like, if they're gonna run with Amen and Kenneth and Drew as the 3 main guys, and apparently Amen's been getting a ton of love from guys in the building, then that's fine as well. But let's talk a little bit about the draft, because I think there's a really interesting topic that we can talk about, which is a surplus value. So if you don't know what surplus value is in the draft, it's basically, I'll put it like this: surplus value is the actual value of a player's performance based on what they've shown on their rookie deal minus what they're actually getting paid. So the best example is like TJ Watt, right? The Steelers selected him with the 30th pick in the 1st round. He is now earning the most money of any edge rusher in the NFL before, someone like Nick Bosa takes over. They selected him with the 30th pick, and reminder, the 30th pick like makes one of the least amount of money in the 1st round, or among all players in the 1st round. So he got paid as the number 1 edge rusher after being taken 30th overall. So you can imagine the production he had while on his rookie deal was crazy, given the amount of money he was making paid. So obviously his surplus value is going to be one of the highest of any player in the NFL. So, this was an article by PFF by my coworker, Timo Riske, and he wanted to look at what positions and at what points in the draft can you maximize this idea of surplus value, because that's what you want to do. In the 1st round, your draft pick should be best player available, but the way I'm looking at it is you want to take best player available at a premium position. So if you want to pause the screen and kind of just understand this graph, basically you want to look at the green line, which is the surplus value for each position, given where they're drafted. And you can see pretty much, you maximize surplus value in the 1st round. So when it comes to what the Chargers should do at 17, the answer is simple: just maximize your surplus value. And you maximize surplus value in the 1st round by selecting positions that matter, that are premium positions and affect the pass game. Quarterback, obviously, we don't need. Edge, receiver, tackle, interior D line, and corner. Luckily for the Chargers, they have a need at all 5 of those positions after quarterback. They do need an edge. They do need a third receiver, or the third receiver has been mocked to them. They do need a right tackle, assuming Filer stays at left guard. They could still use some help on the interior D line, and they still need a corner. Like they could draft Trent McDuffie if he falls or something. So if you look at the curves, right? So the first graph was looking at the entire draft. That's why it's a downward curve. But now once we zoom in on the draft and we only look at the top 40 picks, you can actually see you maximize surplus value on edge, receiver, tackle, interior D line, and corner after the first 10 picks. And honestly, the max surplus value you can get on these picks come in that like 12 to 20 region, which is where the Chargers fall under, right? So you can the Chargers are actually in a very good spot to maximize the surplus value they can get out of any of these 5 main positions. Now, obviously, I do want them to stay away from taking a guard. They're not going to take a tight end. I definitely don't want them taking a linebacker, and they shouldn't even look at running backs until the sixth round, for being honest, right? So again, the whole idea of what I'm thinking the Chargers should do is just maximizing surplus value by attacking a position of need that's a premium position in the first round. So like I just talked about how they need a backup edge player, but do you really want to take a backup in the first round? No. So we can kind of cross edge off the board. Do they need a third receiver? Yes, but they already have Palmer, Guyton, Williams, and Allen under contract. Those are your top 4 guys. If you add Olave or Garrett Wilson or Jameson Williams to the mix, like is that really maximizing is that going to maximize their surplus value? Because they're like, this third receiver is going to be playing behind Allen, Williams, and probably Palmer for the next at least 2 or 3 years, right? Like they're going to be in a timeshare. So are they really going to be, is their surplus value really going to be maximized? And the answer is probably no. Let's go to tackle. Still need a right tackle, right? Trevor Penning falls. Maybe he's the answer. If Charles Cross falls, maybe he's the answer, right? That's maximizing surplus value, because now you're going to be able to draft a guy who's going to start from day one, assuming he's the first round pick, right? So you can maximize his surplus value since he's probably going to be playing years 1 through 5 of his rookie deal. So tackle is definitely still an option. Interior D line, I mean, they signed Sebastian Joseph-Day to play nose and D tackle. I don't think Jordan Davis should be off the board just because of the value he adds to the run game. Plus, you can see one of the major max points on this graph for interior D linemen come in that 10 to 20 range. So you can maximize Jordan Davis's surplus value. And obviously with corner, the thing about corner is it's so hit or miss in the NFL draft, especially in the first round. I mean, for every Patrick Surtain, you're going to have a Jeff Okudah, right? For every like Eric Stokes, you're going to have a CJ Henderson, right? You got to just be wary of that. So as much as like the hype around Trent McDuffie, has, we still have to be cognizant of the fact that hitting on a CB in the draft is very tough, right? So that's basically just talking about surplus value and why the Chargers should be attacking what positions they attack. And, obviously you just listen to Steve and Alex and Tyler talk about their favorites at each position. And the last thing I wanted to talk about before I end today is looking at grinding the mocks. So this is basically a mock draft analytics website, which compiles mock drafts from experts, fans, and all types of mock drafts on the internet, and scrapes it and records the result. And you can see the most commonly mocked players to the Chargers within the last month, from February to March: Jordan Davis, Trevor Penning, DeMarvin Leal, who I would hate at this, or I don't even know who he is, honestly, but he's not Jordan Davis, so I don't really want him as an interior D lineman. Jermaine Johnson, Jameson Williams, Karlaftis, Drake London. So you can see the main breakdown of who has been commonly mocked to the Chargers in the past month. Around 42% of the time, or 43% of the time, it's D tackle. 16% of the time it's receiver, 13% of the time it's tackle, 13 is edge. So, like I said, every position that's important, that's a premium position that I just mentioned in the article, is what people are mocking to the Chargers, which is a good thing, right? Like that's a good thing. Now, if you want to check out the site, just search up grinding the mocks on Google, and it should be the first link, and you'll come to this shiny app. And you can just play around with it. It's a really great app, and it's something that everyone should be using. Within the next month as the draft stuff ramps up. So I hope that was insightful. You learned a little bit about surplus value and like how the Chargers should be attacking the draft. I think it should be a very fun process. I mean, the Chargers only have two picks in the top 100, I believe, but outside of that, I mean, that they're in a very good position to make moves, and they obviously have a lot of draft capital if they want to trade some away, get some premium players at good positions like Brandon Cooks or whatnot, or whoever else is on the market. So that's going to wrap it up, guys. Again, thanks for watching to the end of the episode. And with that, as always, bolts up.